Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. Vaccine mandates are becoming part of the conversation about the new normal, but there's disagreement about the approach. For one Seattle area group, the debate is heightened because it's personal. They experienced one of the most famous super spreader events in the country. In a minute, Seattle Now producer Clare McGrane will tell us the story of the Skagit Valley Chorale. But first, let's get you caught up. Fully vaccinated Mariners fans no longer need to wear a mask inside T-Mobile Park. The M's will keep track of who's vaccinated using special wristbands. You just need to show your completed vaccine card to get one. But King County Public Health Officer Dr. Jeff Duchin would like you to consider masking up in public places anyway, even if you're vaccinated. It creates less hassle for businesses, and COVID transmission remains high around the county. It was bound to happen. The divorce of Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates is getting spicy. There are reports Bill Gates made advances on multiple employees during his time at Microsoft, including while he was married. Then the Wall Street Journal reports the company's board investigated him in 2019 when they learned about an alleged affair with a staffer. Gates says his decision to leave the board while the investigation was still happening was unrelated. And good news for one endangered species. State and federal biologists report that new baby fishers have been born in the North Cascades. They think for the first time in more than 50 years. The kits and their mom were spotted on a trail camera in western Chelan County. The fisher is related to the weasel and is one of the only animals that can take down a porcupine. 89 fishers have been released in Washington to help restore the population. Super spreader events are the worst case scenario in a pandemic. Last March, the Skagit Valley Chorale experienced one of the first and most famous super spreader events in the U.S. It was an early example of just how disastrous COVID outbreaks can be. The chorale is a community choir based about 90 minutes north of Seattle in Mount Vernon. It's a rural part of western Washington, lots of agriculture, politically diverse, and famous for its tulips, of course. Producer Clare McGrane has been digging into what happened to the Skagit Valley Chorale and how that experience is affecting their reentry.
Ruth Backlund is a retired French teacher, but her passion is for music. She's the co-president of the Skagit Valley Chorale, and for her, there's something special about singing in a group.
You feel those sound waves in your body from other people that are so close around you. The sound moves through you, and it's an amazing feeling.
Choirs are intimate. You learn to recognize the breathing of the people standing next to you. That connection is what a lot of people love about singing. But that connection is exactly what landed Ruth and the Skagit Valley Chorale in the middle of the most notorious super spreader event in the U.S. It happened at their rehearsal Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. This was during the awkward 2 weeks between realizing COVID was in Washington and lockdown actually starting.
You know, all the schools were open, all the libraries were open, all the stores were open, all the restaurants were open. It was just general consensus that if you observed social distancing and washed your hands, you'd be fine. And so we did that. To the extreme, we did that. We had somebody that was greeting everybody at the door with a hand sanitizer, and we stretched the seats out.
61 people chose to come to rehearsal that night. That's about half the chorale singers. They spaced out in their practice hall at Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church. Imagine a big, multi-purpose room in a church. It's got these vaulted ceilings. Being there was strange.
We didn't even know if that was going to be the last rehearsal or not. We knew that things were changing.
This is Adam Burek, the choir's artistic director and conductor.
So I wanted to start out with an affirmation of why we do what we do. I chose the song Sing On. That was one of the pieces that we were working on in preparation for our concert.
Sometimes when I chance to catch the sunrise, rising o'er the eastern range.
The choir warmed up together and practiced their various parts. Halfway through rehearsal, they took a break, snacked on some oranges, the little ones you get at Costco. All told, they spent 2.5 hours singing together.
Never a sneeze, never a sniffle, never a cough from anybody that was there.
It seemed to be a regular practice, but it did not stay that way for long.
Saturday, that morning, I woke up and I had a fever.
Adam didn't know it yet, but COVID was already working its way through the choir. By Sunday that week, 8 people were sick.
The next Tuesday, I learned that about 24 people had been sick and confirmed case of COVID.
We're all getting out immediately to all of the chorale saying, stay at home, make sure that you all quarantine yourselves because we know you've been exposed.
At this point, the choir realizes they're living the nightmare scenario. An outbreak like this is the thing everyone is worried about. Ruth's husband, Mark, called the Skagit County Public Health Department to report 24 possible cases of COVID.
Yeah, they could have said 6, and I would have freaked out.
This is Dr. Leah Hamner. She's in charge of infectious disease at the health department.
It was very scary very quickly because we really didn't have many cases at that point. I think maybe we had 7 total in the county. And then we knew we had an exponential problem on our hands very quickly.
Adam was in charge of updating the chorale as more information came in, and the updates started getting grim.
More and more people sick, more and more people confirmed with COVID. Now we have somebody in the hospital, and now this person in the hospital has died, and now we have another person in the hospital, and that person has died also. And it was just a barrage.
You're going, what's going to hit me next? I've got this in me. It's killing people. Is it going to suddenly get me?
Of the 61 people at that practice, 52 had COVID symptoms. Several people were hospitalized, including family members of the singers, and 2 singers died. Nancy Hamilton, a soprano who everyone called Nikki, and Carol Ray Woodmansee, an alto. Carol died on her 81st birthday.
And then came the media exposure, and people took every opportunity to see us as villains, as stupid as blood on our hands.
People blamed the choir's leadership for the deaths, but they followed all the rules. They encouraged people to stay home if they were worried about getting sick. They washed their hands. But at that time, the rules we were following assumed the virus mostly spread through big droplets and surfaces.
We were all so convinced that it was not droplets, that it was not touching things, because we had been so careful with it.
Ruth looked at what happened to her and wondered, could COVID have been hanging in the air the whole time she was singing? Turns out scientists were asking this question too, so they started studying the outbreak. And the choir created the perfect setting to study COVID transmission. They actually had a seating chart showing exactly where everyone was during rehearsal. The 2 women who died were sitting dozens of feet apart on opposite sides of the room. It was obvious to researchers looking at what happened. This was airborne. These studies changed the course of the pandemic. Here's Dr. Hamner again.
This particular incident was one of the first strong pieces of evidence that there could be airborne transmission, because it just seems mathematically impossible after you stare at it for a long time and wrestle with it that you would have 52 people get sick all at once.
This was a turning point in our understanding of COVID, a clear example of the virus spreading in the air with disastrous results. But it took the CDC almost 6 months to update their guidelines to include airborne transmission. Eventually, the media bonanza around the choir died down. The people who were sick started recovering. And in the fall, Adam started running virtual rehearsals, over Zoom, of course.
So now let us all say, good evening, with proper resonance. Good evening. Yes, good. Thank you.
The chorale even held a virtual concert in December. One of the songs they performed was Sing On, the same one they were practicing during the outbreak. It became their anthem this year. Zoom rehearsals won't last forever. The choir is planning to rehearse in person in the fall. But getting to that point is going to be a new challenge. Ruth and the rest of the choir's leadership called up every singer last year to ask what they're comfortable with. Even the most basic things are in question. Here's Ruth.
Can you see yourself going back to Good Shepherd Hall to practice? Because post-traumatic stress for some people. I haven't been in that place yet, but when you were talking to me about it, I started to have a real strange little feeling about going there.
Ruth told me the feeling she had when she imagined walking into the practice hall was like she was subconsciously holding her breath. She said it was like walking into a loved one's home after they passed away. Of course, we have very effective vaccines now for COVID. Ruth is already fully vaccinated. But vaccines raise another issue. Like businesses and schools and other groups all over the country, the chorale is debating if they should have a vaccine mandate.
I had several people say I'm not going back until I see a vaccination card for everybody else that's singing in that room with me.
One singer in favor of everybody being vaccinated is Nina Tallering. She and her mom both sing in the chorale, and both of her parents got sick during the outbreak.
You know, unless there's a medical reason that they can't do it, I hope that people would really think of it as a kindness to the people around them and protecting the group as a whole.
Other choir members don't want to get a vaccine. One is Carolyn Comstock. She's the group's other co-president.
I got all my kids their vaccines. I'm a believer in vaccines for those things. But I had COVID, and I had a pretty good case of it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't need a vaccine. Now, that may mean that the Skagit Valley Chorale decides that I don't get to sing with them. I'm a president, but I only get one vote.
The CDC does recommend getting vaccinated even if you've had COVID. Carolyn said her decision was a personal one. It wasn't about politics. But a lot of people's opinions about the vaccines are influenced by their political beliefs. The Skagit Valley has a diversity of political opinions, and the same is true of the chorale members. And folks I spoke to said this question of a vaccine mandate is highlighting those differences. Here's Nina again.
It's hard for me that this has become kind of a political issue on some levels. You know, getting the vaccine, wearing a mask, and that we're not trusting in experts and we're not trusting in science always.
If the chorale requires vaccines, people like Carolyn will be forced to get one or leave the group. If they leave it up to individuals, people like Nina might not feel safe singing with them anymore. Right now, it's unclear what decision the choir will make or who will be in that room when they have their first rehearsal this fall. I asked Ruth, the co-president, if there's a chance this decision might break the choir apart. She said there is always a chance, but she hopes the love of singing that they all share will keep them together.
The thing that's nice about singing is you're brought right back together like magnets. It's just zzz, you're back together, and it doesn't really matter how you feel politically, how I feel politically. If our voices blend, it doesn't matter, does it?
Sing on, whatever comes your way, sing on, sing on. Keep your music going, flowing from your heart until the day is past and gone. Take the time to look around and find the things that keep you singing on. Sing on. Sunrise.
That was Clare McGrane, who reported this episode. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Seattle Now is also produced by Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. The music you're hearing now is Sing On, written by Lane Johnson and performed by the Skagit Valley Chorale. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.